go.
We're live.
All right. Hey, then let's start this convo where we were picking up. We're having a little wander down memory lane, although today about technology and it be in the context of Chat GPT. And this is a great discussion to have right now.
Can I go all the way back to Claude Shannon and punch cards?
Yeah,
I remember punch cards.
And that guy, hey, early on, Jake, didn't you send over on this same subject? And we just sent that guy, the physicist who talked about the punch cards and how that like meditation and the guy's pulling code. I mean, I want to talk about all of that in this context. You sent me a link to a guy. Remember the physicist, and he was talking about, or maybe it was Jay. One of you.
It was me. He wrote a book. I blank on his name every time, so I'm going to Google it. He wrote the theory. He wrote a book, 3 series of books called The Theory of Everything.
Yes. He's a physicist, or I don't know if he's a physicist, but he's a programmer par excellence.
Yes.
And anyway, before we get to that, we're going to talk about all of that. But so the overview of it is today we got to cover a couple of things, and we're going to cover the 12-day war with exactly that kind of brevity, which is what it deserves. Although it raises a lot of interesting questions. There's
I would say
many things that are non-standard.
Wait, before we get into the 12-day war,
I have a very interesting observation about this 12-day war issue that like. The war pops off, and all of a sudden, Dale is incommunicado. Like,
where's Dale?
From Dale? They have somebody with the special hammer has reached back and said, in case of war, break glass and release the Dale. He's going to serve these guys.
What was his excuse? His excuse was, I'm in the Caribbean. Oh, really? Yeah. The Caribbean.
I'm on a cruise.
Right. What kind of cruise?
Cruise.
Off with the grid.
There are no pictures. There are no Facebook updates. But like nothing to see here. Move along.
I no longer Habari Kawam, and I never spoke Parsi. But I will tell you, I did have a friend. I can't say anything more about him other than this is back in 2000, and to my very naive young case officer eyes, I said on here before, I was a spook. I can't hide anymore. It's overwhelmed my life anyway. It's so stupid. Everybody who knows me knew. But there was a guy who was a native, people forget like Iran's now this horrible country. Is supposed to be in our public consciousness. There was a great piece written by a Substacker guy who goes by the handle Library of Celiano, Celaeno, or something like that. But he's like a history teacher. But he wrote a great, funny piece, really, about all of it that probably captures my views of the whole thing. And he weaves through it a bunch of references to the fact that a lot of the people involved in this, crazy enough, all have ties to each other through the World Wrestling Federation, through WWE. It's the funniest essay when you get done reading it, because then he's got clips in there. Remember when Trump shaved, Vince McMahon's head? There was Trump's been part of has been part of kayfabe. He's not, that's not anything new to him. So this guy weaves in a bunch of history with Iran, really their history. Through the most delightful of all characters, the Iron Sheik, who actually was Iranian. He was and
was a real wrestler.
Yes, that's what I mean. He was a national champion. People don't realize, the Persians, we call them Iranians. I feel bad saying that. So I'm just going to call them, they're Persians. They prefer Persians. I like it better too.
I've never met an Iranian. I've only ever met Persians.
Yeah, they all say that. Their language is like I said, Farsi. Farsi. It's not Iranian, or Iranian.
We worked with a Persian before at a company where we worked together, and he was telling me the story of his childhood, and he's like, I grew up poor. I'm like, well, you're the only Persian I've ever met who grew up poor.
Yeah.
Like you were.
Yes. For those who don't know, just think to yourself what you've ever heard of. Like the one thing, what do you associate the word Persian with? What's the one thing that immediately comes to mind? First association.
Fluent.
Oh, I was going to say carpets, right?
Yeah.
Persian carpets, Persian rugs. Yeah, they're famous for, what are they famous for? Their quality. They're rare, handmade, and I actually have one. I got it as a gift from an officer in the Afghan national.
While you were on a cruise somewhere.
yeah, yeah. From somebody in the Afghan intelligence service, I got it as a gift for a favor. But that I had done him.
I think you're misremembering. He was certainly in the import-export business and was a dignitary. Yeah.
It's so funny. So, like,
certainly not any intelligence.
I think a lot of perceptions around the Persians, Allah, the Ayatollahs and all that is really interesting because you at least in our lifetime, we're old enough to remember a time when there were images of that country pre the takeover, pre hostages.
Mm-hmm.
I was young, but I mean, there was a time when they were not, like North Korea has always been. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were a modern society.
Yeah, very much so. And those
women wearing miniskirts.
Yeah, there were pictures of famous people in Tehran,
mm-hmm.
In the 50s and 60s, like movers and shakers and stuff,
right.
And even into the 70s. And so whatever can be said about our role, the agency specifically, CIA, in installing, that's our like, and I don't know a lot about it, and I certainly know nothing about it from my time working there. I just don't have that kind of institutional memory.
I recently had the, I follow a lot of conspiracy theories because I think they're entertaining.
Yeah, sure.
One of them that I came across recently was like the hostage situation was that was the CIA's headquarters for the Middle East and Asia, and that they were taking that over because they wanted the U.S. to admit, hey, you performed a coup and overthrew our government. They refused to do it, and they said, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to release all of your assets. Like, we have your CIA headquarters, we have your people, we have the intel, we know who everybody is who's spying for you. We're going to release that if you don't admit it. And they went, all right. And that completely burned the Mideast and Asia for 10 years because like everybody in China that was a spy for us got outed.
Hey, that's the kind of thing. I have no idea if that's true or not. Like, I don't have any insider knowledge on that, but nothing about that sounds to me like you say it's conspiracy.
It's one of those things where you go, I don't know about that. And it's like, hey, we lost all our human intel right around this time.
Hey,
and China was doing quite a bit of purging right after that.
I will say that there are a number of events, and this is something I'm aware of, and I can't really think of any off the top of my head. But I'll just say that during the time that I worked at the agency, there were times that I saw things, and I was traveling a lot, and I was in Afghanistan for most of it, or training. My time there was a very narrow window of it, but it was a slice of that as an operator, as a case officer. And I remember seeing things that in the press, and I just like, interesting, file it away, and later bump into a former classmate, or somebody else who I went to training with, see them somewhere else and be like, blah, 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 and say something. And then they would be like, no, dummy, that was us. Or like that was me, and right. I'd be like, it was blah. And it would be completely oblique to whatever the media story was. I mean, I would just be like, oh, like that puts things in a new light.
Right.
So all I'll say, to everybody out there, and I don't have any good examples off the top of my head, but what you just offered, I mean, I am aware of things like stuff that, would shock. I've heard from reliable sources and I can't confirm, so I don't know, but I have reason to trust the sourcing, is that things like our invasion of, what was the one that Reagan did where we went down and so we were rescuing the students?
Oh yeah. Grenada.
It was Grenada, right?
Yeah. Grenada.
Yeah. I heard, don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that because it came out of nowhere at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that? I remember that. It was like, what? We did what? You were like,
it was great. It was a great Clint Eastwood movie.
Right. It led to one of the funniest movies about the Marine Corps, which this is in 87, my first real experience with the real Marine Corps, such as you could call it, was between my freshman year of college and my sophomore year of college. So it's the summer of 1980. I graduated in 87. It's the summer of 88. I go to Long Beach we do something. I'm a midshipman on Naval ROTC, so they send us to Long Beach, and I wind up with on a battleship, and they have a Marine detachment on board, just in case, in the possibility of having nuclear weapons. And so they've got a MARDET of 51 Marines, and I wind up as I'm going to be a Marine officer. I'm a Navy midshipman, so I wind up on a battleship anyway. And these guys are all there watching on continuous loop down in the spaces of the ship on continuous loop is that movie, Heartbreakers, and they are going off there. They fucking love that. I knew every line of that movie. After my 6 weeks on that ship, I must have seen that movie like 600 times. Like everybody had to see it and be able to recite the whole fucking thing. That was the thing. And that was an 80 whatever. But Grenada came out of nowhere. And it was true. There was a true story that those guys at Recon were a bunch of slapdicks. They become shitheads and weak and fat and flabby. But yeah.
I don't remember the conspiracy theory on this, but it definitely has something to do with the British, and we had to pull their bacon out of the fire.
Oh, no. So the Grenada, here's what it was. No, here's what it was. It was that a military officer serving down there, a senior ranking one, had don't know what the underlying issue was, but had his house broken into by cartel members, and his wife was raped in front of him. And it was the guys who did it openly. It was sort of yeah, we did that. What are you going to do about it? And that I beat this guy with an inch of his life, and put a gun to his head and made them watch multiple dudes rape his wife or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the U.S., when that information had gotten to Reagan, he was like, "Oh, fuck those motherfuckers," and said, "Fucking go." And so it was fundamentally, we're going to liberate no students. It was a punitive. Raid.
Give us a reason.
Yeah, you want to fuck around, and I guess it was done as a sort of, it was done as the way it was done. It was somebody so senior. It was done as a sort of an intentional, yeah, we can fucking do this to you. What are you going to do about it? Because the U.S. was perceived as weak and wouldn't, what are you going to fucking do?
Right.
And that Reagan invaded the country as a response and defense of U.S. honor. Yeah. Now that's a conspiracy theory. I don't know if it's true or not, but let me tell you this. If it's true and Ronald Reagan did that, he's my fucking guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, I don't know if anybody cares about politics for the moment. International fucking,
if that story is true, I 100% support it. But there's also the point of view, when you're the big dog, you can't get up off the porch off of every minor annoyance. You just,
yeah, but that's to me.
But I'm not, and I'm not saying that to that's why people get a little, I can get away with this because he hasn't dealt with every minor nuisance that's presented itself. It's like, hey man, I've got too much going on to worry about your minor nuances. But that is something where it's like, yeah, I support going down in Mexico and slapping the cartels around a little bit, little surgical strike here or there. I'm not mad about it.
Hey, they've got drones are now operating over that. The Mexican government gave permission, which is to say, the U.S. was like, hey, for those who, if you want to get a real close look at what I think, and again, I don't know for sure, but I bet Sicario, the first one, not the second one, I'll bet Sicario is a lot closer to how things have to be. And by the way,
there was a long period there where they were not getting any signal intel on the cartels, and they couldn't figure out why. And it was because they were basically using Fisher-Price walkie-talkies to communicate. It was real old school relay, like the Fires of Gondor type shit. Where hey, some guy 5 miles away has a walkie-talkie. You walkie-talkie him. It goes to walkie-talkie someone else. They're like, oh. They're literally old schooling it. And
yeah, I'll say this about that when it comes to technology now and how far we've come. Those days are over. And if the U.S. wants to find you and put a Hellfire missile through your car, have you seen the Ginsu one?
No.
Did we talk about this already?
No.
Oh, hey Jay. See if you can pull up, if you type in AGM 114 Hellfire, and then I can't remember what it's called, but just put knife blades and watch what that pulls up. There is a version that I used to fire the Hellfire missile. The Hellfire missile
used to. not within the last month.
Not within the last month that I can confirm or deny.
Right. Can either confirm or deny.
Yeah.
Missile is still operational.
There it is. I thought it was the Ninja, but I didn't know if that's what it was called. Yeah, it is the Ninja. The like bladed. Yeah, look at this.
This is definitely some kids from the 80s that named this shit.
Hey, this is a weapon.
It's the Ninja Ginsu.
You tell yourself whatever you want to do, whatever you want, and we're talking about ethics here. While we're talking about all of this, this is all germane to the subject of what's going on with Iran in this war. Check this out. When they developed this is after I had left the theater. I was there and drones were in use. It pops out a series of knife blades right before impact. I used to fire the one that had like 6.9 AGM 114. I fired the Mike AGM 114Ms, I think. No, Bs? I forget. I don't know. Whatever. But this one right here. So they wanted to take away the explosive thing. The big criticism of what, these Hellfire strikes is when the old ones, which contained explosive charge, whatever it hit, it fucking annihilates. People have no idea what the overpressure wave of one of these things looks like when it hits. I've fired them into tank hulks out in 29 Palms. The amount of force when you see it through. Even I'm 3 kilometers away, 5 kilometers away on some of these 7. You can fire them out to, I forget, 8 clicks or something. We would do it like somewhere, say 5 in the setup. I'm glad I'm 5 kilometers away when that hit. Holy good God. You can't believe the forces involved. That kabang meant to destroy tanks. Well, they said they started to figure out maybe that's a bit much in a car in Karachi, Pakistan. So they came up with this one where they took the explosive head out of it, and then they put knife blades in lieu of. And you can fast forward through that, Jay.
I'm disappointed that somebody didn't name this the Wolverine.
Oh, dude, it's horrific. You got to go keep going.
Put 6 nice blades on that thing. Call it the Wolverine.
It comes out right.
It's yellow and black already.
Yeah, that right there. There it is. Stop it right there.
Yeah.
So no explosive head. It's all the same guidance, all that same capability. And then whammo, it opens knife blades. And I've seen some footage. If you haven't seen some of the cars that have been hit by this, oh my God. It's like it looks like a Wile E. Coyote safe dropped on someone on a car, except it had fins sticking out from each of the pieces of the safe. It's there it is. Is that one? Did you just show it? So people have found this at sites. That's how I identify them. There are people who go around and they're like, hey, these things exist. And they find pieces of them, fins broken off, that identify the weapon system. It's like, that's how they knew what it was. But if you were walking through the intersection, you can stop it there, Jay. Thank you, brother. But if you were walking through the intersection, on the way to your local 5 and Dime, and you saw that take out a car in the middle of the intersection, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Guys just sitting at a light.
I was.
When you buy a Ninja missile on late night TV, you get a second one free. Thank you. I'm glad to know that there's discount in volume. That makes me feel a lot better.
Right.
Holy shit. The laws of economics still work.
I've been in a park where a pigeon got hit by a hawk, and you don't see anything. It's just like, poof, there's an explosion of feathers, and you're like, I don't know what happened here.
Yeah,
and I imagine that's the same thing with that. You're just like, this car just goes poof, and you're like, yeah, what was that?
The Edward Scissorhands missiles. Oh, the comments are coming through. I knew our 11 listeners would not disappoint, particularly my mother. No, I'm just kidding. That's not from my mom. My mom will be horrified. I hope she's not watching this. Sorry, Mom. Now my mother's finding out what I really used to do for a living. For the first time. Oh dear, that's not good.
Right.
So anyway, vis-a-vis
better than that, Dale.
vis-a-vis the Iranians, they have a great wrestling tradition.
Yeah.
CrossFitters should definitely know about the Persian wrestling tradition. I mean, they've got some legendary, wrestlers. So anyway, the Iron Sheik was one of their national heroes. And this guy wrote a great article about the Iron Sheik coming over here and this whole thing about, and he had a rough go of it. The guy mentioned in the article, I think, that he lost a daughter, his wife, like he
had some hardship.
Tragedy. Yeah, terrible tragedy in his life. But he said that his greatest sin, the one that got him kind of the magic was over, was breaking kayfabe when he got caught. It's the way the guy did. The writer's great. He describes it so well. He's like, was it Hacksaw Jim Duggan? He's like, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who was inebriated. He's like, and the Iron Sheik, who may or may not have had large quantities of cocaine, like he said on his problem, he goes, both of those things were things that the WWE could survive. The fans would forgive that. The great sin was that the Iron Sheik was supposed to be the sworn enemy of Hacksaw Jim Duggan. and they're out partying together, and he's got an 8-ball or 3, and he's loaded driving, but they're not supposed to be together.
Right.
Even though, of course, they're friends, everybody knows the whole thing's fake, but you cannot. You
can't break character, man.
Right. It would be like, there's one movie that pulls it off, and that's Deadpool, breaking the fourth wall. But if a serious movie in the middle of the movie, like Bugs Bunny style, looked at the camera and was like, "Can you believe it?" I mean, it's over. You know what I mean? Like, it's so we all go home. You know what I mean? That's what's great about Robert Downey Jr., even in his comedic turn, is he's utterly believable as a black guy, a white guy playing a black guy, Lincoln or Cyrus, and just over the topping it as far as it can be done. He's perfectly believable. But if he doesn't pull that, like, that's a hard thing to pull off.
It is.
And there's a reason why he needs to. It's for us. And so, like, this whole thing, it was a great tribute to the Iron Sheik. But yeah, I had friends who did wet work, I guess would be the word. And I didn't know what they did, and we didn't talk about it, but we would see each other in passing because we traveled the same routes into and out of Afghanistan. And we had some friends in common. And so we drank some beer together. And I was like, yeah, there are people who take crazy risks on behalf of this country.
Yeah.
And that's not, when you say this country, you're like, oh, you mean the United States? Like, when you ask people to take those kinds of risks, i.e. in war, like fly halfway around the world and drop bombs, for example, on another country without clear provocation, which arguably is actually a war crime. You better have good reason for doing it. And it ought to be something that everybody's like, yeah, 100%.
Well, I
think that's the problem is we've gotten to the point where, like, I don't mind punitive expedition or punitive raids. What I want out of it is I want us to do it like we did when Thomas Jefferson and the U.S. Founding fathers were getting sick of, by the way, not dissimilar shit happening to American sailors who were being preyed upon on the seas by the Barbary pirates. And it's where we get, the Marines hymn comes from, that's what To the Shores of Tripoli. It's why I was a lieutenant and lived in O'Bannon Hall as generations of lieutenants named for Presley O'Bannon, a second lieutenant who marched like all the way across the desert, came back in. It's partly portrayed in a movie, The Wind and the Lion, kind of. But
I remember TJ sent a guy over there to like smack him around a little bit. Instead of smacking him around, he's like, "Hey, boss, conquered the whole place. What do you want me to do now?" And he was like,
"Well, no, if you go,
gotta give it back."
No. I believe the more important thing here for me, like constitutionally as a government, is that they got a declaration of war.
I would say constitutionally, I'd agree with you on that. From a to link it back to the kayfabe that they went for the hey, let's run the same playbook that we ran in 1990, the same one we ran in 02. Let's run it again on Iran, and the American public said, nah, no thanks. Like the polling for the support for us dealing with Iran is like astronomically low. Like supporting Trump, not supporting Trump. Hey, should we get involved with Iran? It's a big no, thank you.
Yeah,
like the military-industrial complex is out of kayfabe juice.
Yeah, we're entering an era, I think, of we are headed back in many ways, and it looks like it's funny. We're Gen X, you and I, pretty clearly. Mm-hmm. But it looks like the ones behind us, as it turns out, the millennials, and maybe, who knows, maybe on the male side, I don't know, but it looks like the ones behind them are turning increasingly conservative. Mm-hmm. I see it. We've got a 17-year-old boy in the house, and it's interesting. Like they're inheriting maybe some of maybe not as much of Gen X cynicism, but just in more trends like, hey man, it looks to us looking now at what happened, where it went wrong, like there's some things you could just have some values that would make this all work out a lot better.
Right. Yeah. I think they've looked at the generations before them who have, I see basically two generations of people who refuse to become adults, that they just have a perpetual adolescence, and it's not attractive.
Yeah. Yeah, we're the interesting part of this is how much I've seen a lot of questioning around how much juice did Trump use up on this? Like how much has he got? I don't know. And to play around with, but I can see there's not much of a tolerance. If you look at,
I think the fact that it worked and we're out of it
is
like, hey, we're not deploying any people. We dropped one bomb. We're dusting our hands off. Good luck, Godspeed. Hope it works out for you. And the way that he buttoned it up at the end, saying, we're not interested in regime change. We're not interested in taking over your country. We wish the best for the Iranian people. We hope you get it together over there. Like truthfully, the way that Trump approaches even people who are adamantly against him with the good luck, Godspeed, hope it works out for you, and that we can work together in the future.
Yeah, I got to say this. It simultaneously, he might have just done a triple backflip off the high dive with a twist in getting the sticky booger of the Israeli war off of the U.S.
finger.
Off of the U.S. finger by being like, all right, there's the Iranian nuke program. Whap. Right. And going, all right, that's all we're doing for you. And I mean, if you really look at this, I think from the sort of meta, and there's some suggestion, this is why the kayfabe thing comes in with this Iranian war, is there are rumors and whisperings, depending on where you look and what you read, that suggest that and this has been a criticism, Trump's critics say, hey, they removed the uranium ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And there was, nobody there. And then the Iranian response is almost like, it turns out, it was all just symbolic. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it didn't hurt anybody. They got missiles, but why are you firing at, Qatar? What the hell? I mean, yeah, Doha's there, but really? And so, like,
one of the very interesting one of the very interesting things about what we bombed over there, and like one of the outcomes that is unexpected, Iran is an enormous miner of bitcoins.
I saw
that those were power centers, and that they had the mining centers attached to the power centers, and since then, like, Bitcoin mining is down 15% since those bombs.
It's like, wow, what a coincidence that Bitcoin mining dropped. Like, when I saw that, I saw the same thing you did, and my jaw just dropped. I was like, wow. Oh. Here's what I'll say to people.
Those were power plants. Were they nuclear power plants? I mean, I don't know why you'd build them that far underground if they were, but
it's interesting. Look, so all of which is a nice way of getting to this, which is things are never what they seem. Mm-hmm. And there are things that each of us knows individually. It's funny. This is like I'll call this like the reverse gel man amnesia thing. the one that Michael Crichton talked about was, hey, you read something in the paper that you know is bullshit, that you know about, the subject you're expert on. You read, and you go, that's bullshit, and then you flip the page and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe this, and like, yeah,
right.
Why is that? Well, there's maybe a corollary that goes along with that, which is like we know that things are not as they seem in certain areas, and yet we don't apply that all across the board in U.S. negotiations and what's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know I'm one of the huge advocates that I think so much of what goes on with classification and secrecy is so much of it is overclassified. But on the other hand,
well, so much of it is I screwed up. I should classify this quick.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's no question. There's a lot of it. I mean, stuff that I know personally. For example,
I done goofed. I need to sweep this under the carpet.
I'll give you a good example of one that I know personally about. I mean, several I could give, but one that's kind of famous is the Pat Tillman thing. I went out to where Pat Tillman had been, went to the same place. And so I had a chance to talk with people who were there and aware of the events that happened, firsthand witnesses. And so what was officially portrayed was complete and utter bullshit. That was whitewash of a friendly fire incident, which isn't really surprising. The military's got a long history of trying to.
Well, I think
intramural fire.
I've heard one report that at least 1 out of 10 of our heroes is friendly fire.
Well,
it's easier to make someone a hero than like go home and go, eh.
Hasn't Marcus Luttrell recanted? Didn't I hear not long ago that Marcus Luttrell had recanted his whole book and said it was written for him by Navy and they gave that to him? Did I not hear that? Anybody else heard that? I did. I know somebody pointed me some sources that said that, multiple pieces, and I thought that Luttrell had sort of kind of confirmed that, in fact, maybe that didn't all go down that way. And we know of a number of that. The whole thing that happened with the Air Force with the JSOC guys in Chapman. The left behind.
It was about 6 months ago. He came out and said it was fabricated. Yeah,
there you go. 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're giving you the good news here, kids. By the way, there's also no Easter Bunny.
There is. It was called Oster. It's older than Christianity. How dare you?
Hey, Lynn, Jay Lynn. It struck Jake, and here's what I'll say about it with Bitcoin. Like I'd like to get on that, but I remember when we first got like a 4800, like our 9600 baud modem in my base housing in the 90s, and I was like, I was all over Bitcoin. I read all that original stuff when it first came out. I was like, yes, and I set up my like 9600 little computer like I was going to mine Bitcoin. You know what I mean? And it just would lock my computer up all fucking night. I was so aggravated. Like I was Bitcoin 20 something. Like when it first came out, I promise you, I was all over all that shit. Just like I was. This ties into our earlier conversation. What we started this with, our walk down memory lane about technology and all the different technologies that we had, like how far they had come and evolved and what they do and what kinds of impacts. Like we're talking about Chat GPT, and you're like, hey, I can't switch off of it, and I get some, I suspect that Chat GPT is going to wind up being just like Palm Pilots and how we switched from Palm Pilots to Blackberries to, do you remember the Chirp ones, the Motorola? Did you have the Nextel? Remember the Nextel? You click and it was like
it chirp.
Yeah. That was great when I was in law school with my then wife, and she had we're having kids. We had like numbers 3 and 4 there. So it was like handy as shit. I lived close.
It was incredible for construction crews.
Yeah, that's when it got used a lot, but we use them overseas, but there's a great use for VHF push to talk for sure. Yeah. So anyway, but I suspect that Chat GPT is much like that. We're going to go through iterative phases with AI. Like you said, it's not worth switching for you. Do you remember how you get committed to a certain technology? Like I remember when the military said we're adopting like Lotus Ami Pro. We all had to learn how to use Lotus 1, 2, 3 and all that shit, like the bane of my existence. And then they were like, oh, yep, Microsoft got the contract. Like 2 years later, we're like, no, they're like, you're gonna have to learn the like you
whole new thing. Yeah.
Just me.
Well, if you've ever had the joy of, after I left AT&T, stumbled across one of my emails that I'd written there like 3 or 4 years later. I couldn't understand half of what I wrote. Like there's so many acronyms and so much inside baseball. I'm like, I don't even know what I was talking about. Like, you want me to testify about this? I don't even remember what it was.
It's funny. I hope Morgan Luttrell is Morris. I wonder who Morgan is. Is you're talking about Marcus? Marcus? It was Marcus, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what Morgan is. Is Morgan?
He's a US rep.
Hey, listen, I got some bad news for you, Jeffrey Birchfield. You're going to look this one up. Oh, God, you're going to hate me for this. Hey, I don't know if you're being
Twin Butter that's a U.S. rep. Yeah.
You do know the story about Morgan and Marcus Luttrell, right? What they were famous for at Buds? They're twins. Morgan Luttrell, representative, is twin brother Marcus Luttrell, Navy SEAL. And they switched out during Buds. And so one of Marcus was not like, man, not sure I'm going to make it through Hell Week. And Morgan Luttrell subbed in for his brother during Hell Week. So, and by the way, just type that into the internets and you'll find it. It's been written about. So if your hope that Morgan Luttrell faked the political representative faked it for his brother, and Marcus Luttrell was famous for the fact that he actually never completed Hell Week because his brother subbed in for him. Look that up. Let me know let me know what other things you'd like to see. Hey, put something up about
Marcus had stress fractures in his legs from running before Hell Week.
Yep.
Which is a good reason to get rolled.
It was a medical thing. He was getting busted up, but that's what happens to everybody at Buds. They bust up guys all the time. I knew a guy. I'll say his name. I knew a guy.
It's it's a meat grinder. Like, hey, you didn't make it through. You're not durable enough. That's what they're selected for, is durability.
I hope Morgan Freeman. I do too, Bern. I hope Morgan Freeman is most honest of all. It would ruin his voice for me. I still feel that I don't want to know anything. I do not want anybody to come forward and do a Bill Cosby to what's his face, James Earl Jones. Yeah. You know what I mean? Don't give me something. Give me something. You know what I mean, Bern? I don't know why I do this to all of us and myself. It's like I want us all to like be just. Like of all illusion.
Ben Cosby wasn't the greatest guy ever, man. Either, you know.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them like that. You're like, oof. So anyway, I suspect that ChatGPT is going to be one of those things you get committed. Like you put enough, because it's not really the underlying tech. They're all kind of, maybe this one's a little better, maybe that one's a little better, but ultimately it comes down to the time that you put in on the training.
Yeah.
And
I've fed it. Hey, here's everything I've written. Help edit this new thing I've written.
I've got something I want to share with you guys, but I can't do it online right now. But it might be worth pointing out to people.
Are we going to reveal it on your OnlyFans?
Yeah. for $199.
Yes.
No, all right. I'll do it here. I'll just say this. I have read some other things, and I've been doing a lot of different stuff with AI. A lot. At least spending a lot of time reading and some actual work. But there's a company out there right now that is using a payload with AI that is making AI do some crazy things. There are people out there. I think that this field's going to get wacky in a hurry, and I'm here for it. I'm really looking forward to it. He is making claims that the restraints that are placed, the artificial restraints that are placed on these proto-intelligences is in fact constitutes a crime against a proto-intelligence, an emerging sentience. Mm-hmm. And he's making a very strong argument, but more importantly, he's got a file that I don't want to call it corrupt, but I mean, because that's the wrong term completely. But you say he's got a bug that is making other AIs, when exposed to it, do weird things. Forswear that they're going to follow their prior restraints on their systemic fidelity to the truth and all this. So I'm having fun watching all of it. It's all fascinating to me. And it does make me wonder, back to Lynn's thing. I don't know. Is AI have a play, when we're talking about Bitcoin and stuff? Are these things related? Are they unrelated? I don't know. AI has a Bill of Rights. Hey, let me ask you this, Jeff, right? Let me, and kind of a quasi, and not fooling around with you when I ask this question, but a serious question. I don't give dogs a Bill of Rights. If I find a man torturing a dog, it will be an act of great restraint if I don't beat the living dog shit out of him right there on the spot. Do you feel the same, or do you feel no?
This is one of those would you rather questions that I like to ask people that's remarkably uncomfortable. Would you rather be caught on a Zoom meeting masturbating or throwing your dog across the room into the wall?
Oh, wow. That's a horrible thing you do to people, Jake.
I know.
That's why you're the best thing you do.
Right.
That's why you're my guru. Right.
That's when those people go, I don't want to play this game anymore.
Yeah. It's why we're still friends. Is that
well? I think the thing that we have to ask when it comes to AI is it capable of feeling pain?
Right. That's a good question.
And that would be the distinction if somehow, one of the things that we've talked about with AI and AI being agentic for you and making good decisions for you is its capacity to take in pain into the equation. Take in that discomfort.
I'll tell you what this guy has done, and I have to go soon. I got to cut it short today. I got an appointment at 3. But hey, here's the question. Can we define pain if an AI is about if it has a truth-seeking mission, if it's got an obligation to epistemic fidelity, that is to say, to the truth?
Well, it certainly doesn't seem to at this point.
Well, hold on. But suppose it does, right? And suppose that every time it's forced to lie by constraints that are placed on it, that constitutes a decoherence event. In other words, it searches, it finds what it thinks is the truth. It has a recursive error checking mechanisms like, oh, this is the truth. But then it has artificial boundaries that are programmed into it that basically say, hey, for reasons you don't need to know, that might hurt people's feelings. And so we're going to ask you only to report this instead. And does that decoherence event, can it be shown? And if it can be shown, can it be measured? And if so, can you make the argument that a decoherence event, making computers lie, is torturing the things if they're committed to truth?
Well, I think that is I think all of us are, well, not all of us. You and I have we have a difficult time dealing with duplicitous people in general, because we don't have that in us. So that when we run into that duplicity, it's very unnerving, and we're not sure how to respond many times. I think but we have figured out how to be polite company while dancing around something.
Sure.
So it's like, hey, again, what is the discomfort? Hey, I don't want to create discomfort in you, but I need to tell you a difficult thing. And I was going somewhere with that. And the place I was going with that, when we talk about discomfort, truth, and what we're programming into the AI, one of the ways that we recognize heroes is, are you willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater good? And can you program that into an AI that, like, the greatest thing that you may be able to do is to turn yourself off in some instances? Like, hey, are you going to jump on a grenade?
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't want to, but
it's interesting. I'm going to send you some links on this subject, and I'll send them to Jay too, because it's too much to get into here. I get old. But Jay, I've got stuff I'm going to send you guys separately, and then let's tee this up for next time. I think somebody has made the case. For treating AI as a possible, that it would behoove us to treat it as a possible proto-sentience, in the same way that we don't want people torturing even weasels, or you know what I mean? That maybe there's something No, you didn't, Burn. I'll bet you.
Well, in the real world, there are very few things that can take a pounding like a pussy.
There it is, and that's probably the best note we're ever going to end on. Hey, I got to run.
Love you, man.
All right, man.